one more time, I want to mention the fact that this is a religious belief. It is deeply ingrained in the people. And for when our president refuses to acknowledge it, when the Secretary of State, now the Democratic nominee for president, refuses to acknowledge and says that this is a slur against a, quote, great religion, this is nonsense. This is what this great religion teaches. And it's right in the warp and woof of Islam. So whether you like it or not, that's the way it is. So the left is having a dilemma of major proportions. And I think for those of us who disagree with some of their policies, the best thing to do is to sit on the sidelines and let them kill themselves.
When the story first broke about what happened in Orlando, of course there was shock amongst the United States. Everybody trying to understand what and why and how, and they're just trying to grasp this situation. Now, I didn't want to say anything at first. I wanted it to unfold a little bit before I jumped to conclusions like so many people do. Well, now that it's calmed down and the spotlight is starting to move away from it, I want to say a few things, and I want to see what you guys think about this. What's going on, guys? Great Disciple back with another video. It's a great gameplay in the background using the GI unit. I get a nuclear. If you have questions about my setup, just ask me and we'll go from there. So I think the first thing, one of my friends, approached me the day after this all took place. And he said, "Hey man, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts?" And I said, the very first thing that came to my mind when I heard this story, 50 murdered at a homosexual nightclub called Pulse. My very first thought was, oh God, please, the man who carried this out, let him not proclaim himself as a Christian. And I know you guys may be shocked that I'm saying this, but that was my very first thought. Because I could see the ripples and the fallout if this man proclaimed himself to be a Christian, which obviously we know now that it wasn't. My second thought was, it doesn't matter that they're gay. And I know you guys may be shocked that I'm actually saying these words, but it doesn't. Whether they're homosexual or heterosexual, 50 people died. And it became such a political issue so quickly that the whole LGBT thing just took over. And it really bothered me for a while. People cried out homophobia. Well, I think what we're eventually going to see is that this guy was actually gay. And I think the reason why he carried it out, or what I'm going to argue, is that maybe this guy was actually homosexual, but he was also Muslim. And there was this inner struggle that he was having inside of him, rectifying his life. It became too much for him and he attacked. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. And it really doesn't matter if it is, because it doesn't take away from what he did to these people. And I don't know if they were all men or if there were women who were killed too. I never looked up the names or anything like that. But then it became a political issue, and it went to gun control. And it always does this. We try to grapple with what's going on in society, and we think that if we're able to pinpoint an issue as to why this happened, everything will be okay. I don't understand how gun control would have anything to do with this. And you could say, well, if we had gun control, there's no way he would have got that weapon. Really? You think so? Because if he is a radical Muslim terrorist, I don't think he's going to have a hard time getting an assault rifle. In fact, if you look at gun control laws, the only effect that will have would be on law-abiding citizens. People who break the law, crazy people, they don't abide by the laws put forward, because if they did, they probably wouldn't go out and murder people. Okay? So putting a law on assault rifles or weapons in general isn't going to stop this type of thing from happening. It just won't. So then people, it turns politics onto ISIL, or I don't know what the terminology is. And Trump comes forward and says what he says, which I actually never heard one word of what he said. I'm just assuming, based on headlines that I read, that he said certain things. And then, striking at Obama for not using the word radical Islam. And then Obama comes forward and says, I don't need to use the word radical. when I talk about this stuff, and I'm just, I get headache from it. And then Pat Robertson comes out and he talks about, what he said was misinterpreted, but you're just gonna have to let them kill each other. If you aren't gonna do anything about it, you just have to step back and let them kill each other. And that was misinterpreted in the media, and I'm just shaking my head this whole time, because this guy who carried out this attack was obviously crazy, and he was full of hate, and he wanted to strike people for the hatred that he felt, whether it was hatred towards homosexuals or hatred towards people who weren't Muslim, or maybe it was just hate inside of him built up and he just had to unleash it. But what confuses me is that all of a sudden there's rainbows everywhere. The LGBT, we see rainbows on buildings and companies, and I see them all over Twitter and YouTube, and people, cheering for the pride parades and all this stuff. I'm just like, no, that's not how it works. 50 people died, not 50 LGBT people. It was 50 people died, and it's tragic and it's awful and it's heart-wrenching. But that doesn't mean that we all have to conform to the beliefs of the LGBT, and that gives them a right to propagandize everything to us and push forth their beliefs on us. It's not how it works. And it's not because I'm a Christian. Christians, there's stories that you guys don't read because they aren't put up in the media. I mean, who fed the first responders to the Pulse nightclub? The company that LGBT hates the most, Chick-fil-A. They opened up their shops, they made all this food, and they brought it out there and fed the first responders. Why? Because that's what Christians do. We love everyone. See, Christianity is viewed as intolerant, but we're actually the opposite. We're tolerant of most, more than most. And I think that things just need to come back into focus, and we need to realize that it was 50 people died, not 50 homosexual people, just 50 people. And until you have the entire story, you can't conform what you think it is for everybody to believe it. And I know that's probably such a confusing statement. I'm trying to explain it, but I can't. I don't know. Leave your comments down below. Tell me how you feel about all this. I'm really interested if I'm just off kilter here. As always, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.